Welcome back for our next conversation that is part of our 5-week-long Empower-thon event, which is our inaugural fundraiser for the Parent Tween Foundation. Our guest today, or I should say for this hour of today, is Jillie Maria, who is a trauma and emotion coach. So first things first, Jillie, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. So grateful to have an array of professionals who see the value in what we're building. So for you listening, if this is your first time tuning in to any of our conversations, the Parent Tween Foundation is a piece of the greater Parent Tween Connection entity. Parent Tween Connection is where parents go when they don't know where to go. We have community for family, community for professionals, and we work to integrate them so that when a family needs help, they can find the folks who can support them. And the Parent Tween Foundation has as our mission to help bridge the financial gap between families and the help that they need. So Empower-thon is a fundraiser. As you're going through this, I know you're going to get ahas. And so at the end, we are going to have a shameless plug to say, hey, if you got some really good information from this conversation, please follow the link in the description to say thank you to Jillie for giving her time, for donating her time, and for sharing her knowledge to help families across the US and around the world. So we are streaming live to our Facebook group, to our YouTube channel, had to think of it for a second, and to our LinkedIn page. So you can find us anywhere. Feel free to make comments. We will be fielding questions from our Facebook group. So if you're not there yet, it's simply Parent Tween Connection. I have it open on the other monitor. I can see if you want to join us, bring it in, make comments, ask questions. And if you ask them live, we can answer them as we talk. So I'm excited to have Jillie here today because she's a trauma and emotion coach. And if there's a person on the planet who thinks you haven't experienced trauma, I would invite you to go back to March of 2020 because every single one of us did. And so especially coming into a post-pandemic era or post-pandemic timeframe, a lot of us are a whole lot more aware of the mental health impact of trauma. But that doesn't, just because we're aware of it, doesn't necessarily mean that we have tools to manage it. And so having folks who are coming in and giving us insight about how to support ourselves emotionally, but also supporting our kids is really important. So Jillie, thank you for everything we're about to talk about.
You're most welcome.
So you've got a background in political science. And you believe in the woo or practice aspects of the woo. And so I kind of see you as one of those folks who's kind of a bridge, and you bring tools to folks regardless of what their beliefs are. And this kind of fits in an array of belief systems because we're talking about emotion. And you specifically articulate that E-motion for a reason. Tell us why.
Because I want to make emotion, energy in motion, user-friendly. We have so many people that in our society tells us that there's negative emotions. And if you're in the spirituality or the woo communities or whatever, you a lot of times hear talk about, being high vibe and whatnot. And I want to encourage people in this space of, we have many of our, I'm in my 40s, and many of us in our 30s, 40s and beyond, we're taught that feeling emotions was bad. Mm-hmm. Feeling our feelings was bad. And a lot of times even, when I say to people so often in different spaces and different conversations, raise your hand if you've ever heard someone say, or you've ever said, because again, we do what we model, what's modeled to us. If you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about.
That was literally a point that we made, that I brought up in our conversation that we just had with Deb Porter about listening to folks and listening to the emotions. That was her experience. That was my experience. So my hand is raised.
Yes, same. So here's the thing. When I learned about emotion years ago, and I was in the space of hearing it, because emotion hyphenated is not my original idea. But here's the notion is everything is just energy and motion. So if we can say we're experiencing emotion, energy and motion, and you make it like water, like it just moves through you and you are a piping system, it makes it so that we don't want to hold on to it. So let me just give you a short primer in the two ways of saying things, right? Because a lot of people are going to go, oh yeah, the space of I am angry versus I am experiencing anger or
I
I'm
feel
feeling
right.
angry. Because here's the thing. If we're in a space of I am, because I am is two very powerful words. So if we're in the space of I am angry or I am anger, angry becomes part of who I am. And I'm hesitant to release it because if I take that, if we're a Jenga tower and I pull that anger piece out of my tower, there's a chance my tower collapses. And a lot of times we get into a space of, well, who would I be if I let go of my anger? Because that was a question I had to face years ago. And I learned very quickly, and I had an inkling, but I learned very quickly that it was true, was that I said, okay, well, I'm writing, because I used to write a lot of political articles. And I said, well, what happens if there's a chance that if I feel my anger all the way through and I let go of it, I can't write anymore.
So it was it was fueling what you were doing.
Yes. And so when I released it, when I moved through my anger and I had that support container, it felt like this huge brick lifted off of me on the one hand. On the other hand, I soon learned that my proficiency for writing, my passion for writing, was actually fueled by anger. And so a lot of us are scared of feeling those emotions. One, because we don't know what happens. Like, we're scared to feel the emotion all the way through. Like, we have so much rage or years of anger, resentment, etc., that we don't know how to feel, especially our fear-based emotions. And that's why I'm very careful with my wording to say, feeling our fear-based emotions as opposed to our love-based emotions, so that we can move through them. Because here's the thing, if I say I'm experiencing anger, there's a detachment. I'm experiencing cold weather. I'm experiencing warm weather. It's going to move on and do something else. So, as opposed to I'm angry, which has become part of me. And if I pull that piece out, my whole life could collapse. And a lot of us go into story as a protective mode mentally to be in a space, okay, well, who am I going to be? As opposed to saying, I'm experiencing anger as I'm driving down the road that cars won't go faster and I'm stuck in traffic. I'm experiencing anger that my teenager didn't get their butt out of bed at the right time in the morning and now we're late. So as opposed to I'm angry, which one is embodiment and two is, oh, and it colors your whole day, as opposed to being in a space of take a breath. So I want to invite your listeners into the space of one way that you can let go of things.
Yeah, so I like it.
One of the ways that I encourage people to do is say really simple, saying, I am clear, I am clear, I am clear. Because I talked earlier about energy is just energy in motion. So if we say we're clear, as I am clear of all emotion that's not mine. So any energy and motion that's not yours, goodbye. And you start to feel a shift. Probably you're going to do it. I tell people I tell my clients a minimum 3 times a day for 7 days. Up it as you need to. I have it on my phone because if it's not on my phone, it's probably not going to get done. I have a reminder on my phone 7 times a day. If I'm in a space where like I'm around people, if I'm having to people, if you're in a space like a school or whatever, right? Another thing you can do is that's totally like, no big deal, right? Is when they wash their hands, they're washing their hands of the energy of the day thus far. Everybody washes their hands. So they're just doing it, teaching them to do it intentionally. And you as a parent can also set the intention for your children under the age of 18. I'm going to set the intention that my kids, when they wash their hands, are washing their hands of energy. So it's a continuous cycle of every time they wash their hands, they're getting rid of the energy through the day, right?
Interesting, yeah.
So that when and the thing is that can be like they excuse themselves from a class to go to the bathroom real quick. They wash their hands when they're done. They rinse their energy for that period of time. So it allows them to be more grounded and clear without them having to think about it or overthink it. Or, a lot of us have kids that are neurodivergent and they like try to overthink things. They try to get it right. And you can't get this wrong. If you're washing your hands, boom, wash my hands, dry them off, go back to class, I'm done. And there's no effort to it as far as like, this is what you're doing. And, and I have had people say, well, what if my kid does this? And I'm like, then tell them to wash their hands twice. So just, and I also tell people, like, or add extra soap. Those are 2 ways you can do it, where you can just be like, just so we're super clear.
Right.
Again, you're making it fun. We want, especially for tweens and teens, there's so many things that are going on in kids' heads nowadays and in their lives and around them, that I like to encourage these things to be fun, so that they're in a space where, and they also, fun things are more likely to engage your kids. So another thing you can do is stomping your feet and just being in the space of like, moving your body moves energy. So if we can be they're in the bathroom or whatever, or I like to tell people, when you get the kids out of the car or off the bus, teach them, and do it with them. Do it with them, because you have energy too. So
Absolutely.
If you're in space, if you get off the bus and everybody stomps on the ground for a minute or whatever, and just move all that energy off of you. So when you come in the house, you're clear. The energy is clear. You've left the entire day on the lawn, on the concrete, at the bus stop, in the driveway.
I mean, not for nothing, I know some adults who might benefit from doing that when you've had a rough day at the office, or like for me, my office is in my home. I could take, if I had a rough experience, I could take it right on out into the kitchen so easily with me, and being just, stomping feet or just shaking or something to just get it out before I go out and share it with my partner. Yes. Not necessarily who I want to share it with. Why would I want to share it with anybody, but especially not someone I love.
Yes. And I think that that's a really important, part of the thing is, you and I talked about, and I've talked about too, I talk about with my clients too, and other people, is these tips aren't really just for kids or tweens. They're also for adults, because here's one of the things that a lot of parents don't realize is children and animals are natural empaths, which means they naturally, unintentionally take on the energy of the room where they are at, other people, especially their parents. Kids try to find ways subconsciously to control their environment. So a lot of times you'll find kids that if they're in the space of being cranky, right? Or they're in the space of they're good along, everything's good, they had a good day at school, and then all of a sudden they're super crunchy. And as a parent, you're like, where'd this come from? Is your energy clear? And I like to, encouraging people in the space of, you can also play the 1 to 10 game too, which is everybody takes a deep breath and saying on a scale of 1 to 10, because we all know the 10 out of 10 highly recommend. So, on a scale of 0 to 10, where are you at? Hey, I'm at on a scale of 0 to 10, I'm at a 10 out of 10. I feel great. Okay, fantastic. But sometimes I might be in a space of wow, I just came home and, that thing that happened at school, affected me. And suddenly I opened my homework and I saw where I wrote a note, or this person's handwriting is on my thing, and or this person made a comment to me on social media or whatever. And now I'm a 3 out of 10. Okay. So one of the things there is getting a gauge, because it's really helpful as you're moving through things and as you're releasing to say, okay, how do you feel now? Right. Another thing that you can do is have a safe word. Right. So if things are getting especially teenagers, a lot of times they get, belligerent, they got hormones, they got everything going on and expectations and just have a safe word. They get to say the safe word without penalty. So what that means is if you teach them that, hey, the safe word is hamburger, and they go, I need a hamburger. Okay, cool. They get 5 minutes, and you discuss this in advance. When everyone's in a good mood, okay, we're going to set a safe word up. The safe word means you get X amount of minutes to go in your corner, your bedroom, whatever, and just chill. So that things that can't be unsaid don't get said. That the energy, that there's a pull of energy. So mom gets to be here, or dad gets to be here, and the kid gets to be over here. So maybe they go take a shower and rinse the day off. Maybe they go they go run around the house 5 times. Maybe they just need 5 minutes on the video game. Whatever they need to chill. So they get to say, hey, I need a hamburger. And there's no rah about it. There's just, oh, okay. anything. And I recommend saying anything I can do to support you so that they know they're safe. And then being in the space of like, well, I could really use a glass of water, or I could really use, and it's not, and here's the thing is it de-escalates things.
Absolutely. It does.
To be in a, because a lot of times we get into spaces where, and here's the thing with what we just talked about with adults, right? Is that if you are an adult and you have festering trauma or resentment or anger, or you are let's just say you're in a dead marriage and you're staying together for your kids. Okay. You're trying to make it to 18. It happens a lot. We're trying to stay together for the kids. Well, one of the things is your kids are trying to find stability subconsciously. So they're trying to take on your energy as if I make everything my fault, then mom and I take everything on. This is all subconscious. Then mom and dad will stay together. I will be safe, as opposed to being in the space. And then the thing is as opposed to being in a space of, having it even more crunchy and even more destabilized. And kids don't even realize they're doing this, right? But the problem is they don't get mad at the parent who is an alcoholic or a drama queen or a narcissist or whatever's going, or emotionally traumatized that never dealt with it. They make it their own fault. I wasn't good enough. And 20 years later, they're still fighting. So as people are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and you experience this back in the 1980s or 1990s, you didn't ever handle it because we didn't believe in therapy at that point.
Right.
Welcome to 2023, where your kids are manifesting this and showing it to you. And you're like, ah. Yep. So I need a hamburger. Can I do anything to serve you? Can I do anything to support you? No, I just need a breath. Okay. So we'll meet back here in 10 minutes. Okay. Is that agreed upon? Yes. Okay. So everybody go, you're not following them. We're not interrogating. You're not taking it personally. You're just.
Well, and I just thought of an idea too, of like, as the parent or as the adult in this situation, because I've actually had a couple of circumstances with my friends' kids, the ones that I'm super close to, where we've kind of come to fisticuffs, if you will, right? Where some of this would have been useful for me because I don't have any of my own. So it was just an unusual situation. But like, as the adult in this situation, if I saw that the kid needed the hamburger, there's nothing that says that I can't be like, okay, you know what? I think we both need hamburgers.
100%.
And then, in that case, like, what can I do to support you? Here's what I need you to do to support me in our hamburger time.
Yes.
And we're both, go to your corners, as it were, right?
Yes.
And take 10 minutes and then come back.
Yes.
Sometimes and then that models for them that it's a safe thing to do. Even if we feel like we're still calm reasonably calm and in control of ourselves, if we see that they're not, we can implement this on their behalf as if we were the ones who needed it.
Yes. And also say, another thing too is that, to be in the space of, explaining to your kids that, and again, we do this when things are in a good mood, like, hey, I want to implement a couple things that I think might help us in our relationship. I feel, and here's the thing, we're always coming from a space of I feel, like I see, I perceive. Because the thing is, if I say to you, Clarissa, I feel like blah, 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 you're not defensive. You're like, oh, what are you thinking? As opposed to my saying, Clarissa, you, rah, 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 right? And a lot of times that's the back and forth. And when people are defensive, one, they're not hearing anything. And two, they're in the space of responding, reacting, as opposed to,
yep.
And being a calmer space where they're grounded in the space of, okay, let me get my energy back. Let me come back to center. Because the thing is then teaching our kids, like, let's talk through using your words to say, and even telling, I don't know what to say. Let me, and I encourage people to tell you at any age, get a pen, get a piece of paper, and draw it out. I feel like rah, 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 right? So they get to be in the space of like, they're writing the word rah across the screen. Like, what's going on? Like, how are you feeling? Tell me, like, and they get to be in the space of I'm experiencing, so they can say, I feel, I don't have a word for this. And then say, okay, what's the closest thing? I feel like my head's going to explode. Okay. So then you have a visual to be in the space of, okay, can you tell me what brought you to that point? And again, that way it's not personal. It takes the mom did this, dad did this. And the thing is a lot of times we are taking things personally.
Yes.
And that are nothing to do with us. Your kid had a crappy day at school. Their teacher didn't have their coffee this morning. Their teacher didn't have any time to plan. There's another kid in the school that came to school with no shoes. That kid didn't have breakfast because their mom can't afford it. This and blah, blah, blah. And the kids absorbed all of that.
Yeah, they do. They really do.
Rather than and the thing is, a lot of times parents don't even realize that, because when we have teenagers and tweenagers, they have a tendency to not talk. But they're like,
right.
So we're in the space. Then we feel lost as parents, because it's like, well, wait a minute. What am I supposed to do here? And so when we can make these things fun, right? When we can say, when we're in a good mood, hey, I want to implement something. If you're feeling crunchy and you need 5 minutes and and things are escalating, pick a word, your choice, whatever. The safe word is what? And that
can be like hippopotamus.
Yeah, whatever. One of my friends, they have the safe word is taco. Another friend of mine, the safe word is jewel. Another friend of mine, the safe word is Pacino. So it doesn't make a difference.
No, it's the concept.
The point is the concept of what do you need to, what do you need to be in the space of safety? And again, when you have the safe word, it's an automatic way of saying, I need 5 or 10, whatever you agree on when things are good. I need 5 or 10 minutes to just decompress. Maybe you need to pee. Maybe you need to go to the bathroom and cry your eyes out. Whatever you need to do, woosah.
Right? Absolutely.
That's the center. And another thing I want to, give you is, and as far as we've talked a little bit about it, but grounding. And washing your hands is a really good grounding tool. If you're in a space where you can go out and put your feet on concrete because it has sand in it, or you can put your feet in water, like putting your feet in the bathtub for a minute if you're not near water, or even going outside and spraying your feet with water with a hose. I mean, we're getting to the point where it's, nice time of year. Another way you can ground is to put your hands on the ground.
Or like feet in the grass.
Yes, feet in the grass. Another thing you can do is put your feet on wood. So a couple different ways that you can ground into the space of, and you can even like put your hands, like if you have a deck with wood railings, you can even put your hands on that for just a minute and just let yourself. And some people need like something to do really. And I tell people a lot of times too is, imagine that you have a steel pillar going through your whole body and it locks you into the earth, like on demand. And so if you happen to be the woo type, not everybody is, but if you happen to be the type of person that's a little bit woo, you like your tree hugging, you like your crystals. One of the things that you can do is imagine your feet being rooted into the ground. I personally like pillars of steel going through my feet, because something about rooting my feet freaks me out, but that's me. But again, it's just a matter of practicing with these, seeing what works for you. Another thing that you can do is grounding into your yes and your no. So we all have our little body. We all have a human body. So what I want to encourage you in the space of is, when you watch this video, I would go back and watch the replay too, is to stand up with your feet shoulder width apart and ask your body to show you yes. And I would say 95% of people are going to lean forward. Okay. And then ask your body to show you no. And most people, again, are going to lean backwards. And if you're flipped, that's okay too.
It's okay. Work with it.
So what happens then is you want to ask yourself questions, right? So it's like when you calibrate a scale, right? You do whatever the scale requires for calibration. We're doing the same thing here. So what I like to do is decide if you're going to ask questions or if you're going to make statements. So for example, I like to do, am I a woman? Is it Sunday? And asking questions you know the answer to. Right. Was it born in whatever month you're born in? Do I love whatever food you love? And then ask yourself questions that you know are false, or make statements that you know are false. So then you could be in the space of like, I'm a man.
Right.
It's Tuesday. And then once you've, I usually try to do 3 and 3. So like 3 yeses, 3 nos. I'm calibrated at that point. And then, because here's the part of the thing that makes our body and our whole self happy, body, mind, spirit, physical, the whole bit, is, and energetic, is that when we are in our yes solidly or our no solidly, we're in intention and integrity and alignment. Okay. That makes us far less likely to be over here in the raw space. So being in the space of, again, if you're in a space where, like, let's say that mom wants to drag you to the grocery store and you really don't want to go. Okay. Saying, do I want to go to the grocery store? And then letting your body tell you yes or no. Do I need, and especially when this is especially important for teenagers who can stay alone for half an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Is letting your kids be in the space of, I really don't want to go to the store, and respecting that answer.
Yep.
And then saying to them, okay, can I get you anything? Okay. And then being in the space of, okay, so if there's that, emergency, call 911. So every kid has a phone nowadays. So being in this thing of like what to do if something goes awry while I'm gone, I'll be back in half an hour to an hour. But again, and then here's the thing too, is respecting your own no, especially for girls, because we've taught our children, especially our girls, we have so many ingrained things, especially as adult women. A lot of times we've never learned about our sovereignty. We've never learned to say a firm yes when we mean yes and no when we mean no. And they're both equally important. So being in the space of like saying to somebody, because a lot of times, and I even have adult women clients who will say, well, what if I think I would enjoy it? And I'm like, okay, that's when you get to say, and this would be a whole separate piece, but to be in the space of, do I want to go to that party? Because a lot of times there's peer pressure, right? And it's like, and so being in the space of like, and I always like to ask the question too, is now, do I want to go? Because a lot of times that's influenced by peer pressure, as opposed to, is it in my best and highest interest to go to the party? So being in the space, and here's the thing, you don't have to know what's going to happen. And it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. So if we can take the good and bad labels off and say, I just feel like somewhere in that space, I'm going to not be comfortable. I'm not going to be feeling good and like liking this energy and whatnot. Right. So again, playing with the body pendulum, knowing your yes and knowing your no, and then asking yourself those questions. And that's a really good way also to develop your intuition, It is. And for those of you who are like, oh, that's woo, your gut feeling, you get a gut feeling. Same thing.
So, well, and I would add in too, to your point, especially with girls and especially with the sovereignty aspect, but no less importantly with the boys, to the point of like honor their no's when it's something like going to the grocery store, because the more space that we as the adults give them to stand in their no, the more likely it is that they're going to stand in their no in the case of not caving to peer pressure. If we've never made it safe to say, no, that doesn't feel good, they're not getting the practice doing it. Like saying no culturally is hard.
Yes.
And I think that's, again, like I don't have my own children. I've got friends, very close friends who do. So in some ways I'm parts of some families, but from what I've observed and a lot of the kids in the families that I've worked with over the years, they don't like saying no at home is not an option. It's do as you're told. And they don't learn to flex that muscle. And then when they get into situations where we really wish they would, that's, we get mad at them for not saying no when we've never facilitated it or encouraged it before. So I think that's a really, really important point, that you made of like, make it okay for them to say, no, I don't want to go to the grocery store. And
and what you just said, yes and no are simply muscles. And the more, and it's also an important part of the boundaries conversation as kids get older, because a lot of times if we are not told to say no, we end up in some sticky situations and we don't know how to get out of them. Exactly. And one of the things that when I went to college, they had a whole seminar, and they do a whole, like, it's like a 3-day thing now from what I understand, but it used to be like a, like 4 hours in the morning type of thing, like no big deal. Like they kept it super low key, blah, blah, blah. And it was like learning, they would say, okay, if you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable, especially women, like, there's blue boxes all over campus and you can hit it. And if you're running, just keep hitting them and we'll follow. And it was like, that just seems horribly inefficient on the one hand, but it also was to the point of teaching women as well to say no and scream it, like being in the space of like, no. And a lot of women aren't even, I've seen women say no, and it physically scares them. Like they physically freeze in place.
Oh, so
teaching your teenage daughters, especially, to say no and to flex that muscle over seemingly stupid little things like the grocery store, or like, does she want this with dinner, that with dinner? Does she want to go get ice cream? Does whatever things that aren't in the big scheme of things don't matter.
Right.
Teach them that they can flex their yes or no, and invite them. Hey, do you want to do this? You have the option to say no. And I, even as an adult, do that to teach people, hey, you have an option to tell me that, no, that's not going to work for me, and I will work it out. Well, I feel really guilty. Okay, that's cool, but I'm trying to teach you this. And that was, it started as my responsibility. It ends as my responsibility. So again, that's a piece too that's really important that I want to bring up. Take the word fault out of your vocabulary. So it's not a fault thing, it's a responsibility.
Right. Oh, I like that.
My responsibility. It's because we like to be like, oh, my fault, my bad. And there's guilt and shame around that, as opposed to taking out the trash was my responsibility and I neglected my responsibility. So if we change the words.
I like that. Yeah.
So many things we propel, so many, especially in religious situations, we propel so many things around guilt and shame as a mechanism, as opposed to just being, there is no guilt or shame. There's just, it was my responsibility to put gas in the car and I forgot to do it. That's my responsibility. I apologize, own it, fix it, and move on. As opposed to letting that resentment build. And on the other hand, teaching kids as well, again, going back to the notion of, hey, do you want to do this? No, I'd rather not. Okay. And here's the thing too, is thank your kids. Thank your kids for being honest. Because here's the thing. Once upon a time, you were a tween. We didn't have these tools back then. And that's no one's responsibility, because no one had modeled that behavior. So now we get to take responsibility and say, I'm going to lead you. I'm asking you yes or no. And then I get to be in the space of saying, no, I think I'll stay home. Okay. So the safety protocol. And following that, giving your kids, because here's the thing, when you, like you just said, when you give your kids permission for small things, when they're at that party, when they're at prom, when they're with a boy or girl and they're wanting to do things in a physical intimacy setting, and the kid doesn't feel comfortable, when you've built that muscle, you're not suddenly asking them to lift 100 pounds when they can't lift 5. You're saying they suddenly are in a space where they can say no.
Right.
And then step back and know that you as the parent have their back. Because you've taught them to say no.
I love it. And we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but I know that folks listening don't necessarily have hours and hours and hours. So I'm going to say, for this conversation, we're going to wrap it up there. There's been so much good stuff here. And frankly, a lot of things that interrelate with some of the things that some of our other speakers have talked about as well, including the conversation I had with Deb Porter about listening, about having those conversations about little things and practicing active listening on the seemingly insignificant things, because then it makes it easier for the things that are bigger. Just like we're talking about, giving them space to say no to the seemingly insignificant things helps them build that muscle for the bigger things. So Jillie, thank you so much. And to all of our listeners, as I promised you, there was going to be a shameless plug and invitation to say thank you to Jillie for the time that she's offered today and the insight that she's offered by making a donation to the Parent Tween Foundation. We also have a little bit of a friendly competition, if you will, amongst our speakers, that whomever our fundraisingist speaker is, if they have a family focused nonprofit that they love, that they'd like to support, we will take 20% of whatever they generate, or the donations that come in through their link, and donate that to another family focused entity that they would like to support. And Jillie, you had indicated that you weren't 100% sure. Do you have one in mind, or do you want to come back and let us know?
I'll come back and let you know. I'm still doing some research.
Okay, fantastic. I'm just a big believer that there are so many amazing entities out there that if we can lift many up together, or at least lift another one up along the way, then we're, it's that pebble in the pond, right? Like, you never know the impact that you can have with one adjustment in yourself or in the actions that you take. It has ripple effects far beyond what we'll ever know. So we're definitely proponents of supporting other nonprofits as well. So Jillie, thank you. I'm thrilled to have you here. I'm sure we'll have you back on another event somewhere down the road. So thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, and your support of Parent Tween Foundation. I appreciate you.
You're most welcome. It's been an honor.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great one.